What is the definition of a sociopath? Well, a sociopath is often defined as a person who blends in perfectly with society and might even be someone you consider friendly and good-natured, but harbors a secret, darker side to them that is egocentric, callous, manipulative, and even dangerous. People possessing these traits are by no means an uncommon phenomenon throughout the different societies of human history. With the morbid fascination that humanity has with the darker sides of our own nature, sociopaths have been a topic of popular media, from Hollywood movies to manga and anime, for decades now. It's therefore not surprising that a series, especially one belonging to the dark fantasy subgenre that deals with themes of violence, gore, horror, and the grotesque, would also have characters that display such psychopathic tendencies. The series we're discussing is, of course, none other than Norihiro Yagi's most significant work, Claymore. It's an anime set in a medieval world beset with monsters whose only purpose is to feed on the viscera of human beings that call this godforsaken land their home. Humanity's last hope in this world filled with nightmarish creatures and strife is a group of beautiful female warriors wielding giant claymores. The common folk have dubbed these warriors as claymores after their namesake weapons, and they inspire fear and superstition among the rabble. This fear isn't unwarranted. You see, these warriors, or claymores, have a lot more going on with them than meets the eye. They're genetically modified humans who carry within them the flesh and blood of the very Yoma they hunt, making them creatures that exist in the periphery of humanity and monsters, half-breeds, part Yoma and part human. Their half-breed nature gives them strength on par with the Yoma and, in some cases, access to what might seem like supernatural powers. Their physical appearance is altered, further fueling the fears and trepidation felt by the ignorant masses. The origins of these warriors and the treatment they receive from the common folk can very much be compared to the Witchers from Andrzej Sapkowski's books. For a long time, this series has lived in the shadow of Berserk by Kentaro Miura and draws constant comparisons. The manga for Claymore would run for a little over a decade, from 2001 to 2014, and would garner acclaim from fans all over the world. It would also receive a 26-episode anime adaptation by Studio Madhouse, which would further fuel its popularity after being well received by fans. The series initially portrays claymores as infallible defenders of humanity who merely exist to slay monsters and protect mankind. As the story rolls on, we find out that this is a half-truth and a manufactured image by the people behind their creation, known simply as the organization. The reason for their existence is far more tragic and sinister, as we discover towards the end of the series. This information is available in the manga, as the anime only covers the first 11 volumes of the series. We also discover that the warriors themselves aren't these perfect individuals and beacons of hope against the onslaught of darkness like most good guys in manga and anime. Beyond their beauty and deadly skills lie individuals who are very much human and who share the same flaws and strengths as everybody else despite their hybrid status. They all share a bond of trauma where a majority of the claymores have been orphaned due to attacks by Yoma and are fueled by their hatred towards them. Not everyone deals with their trauma the same way, and for some reason, the experience twists them, turning them into monsters without having gone through the awakening process. For those of you joining us for the first time, awakening is a process by which a claymore, after having reached her limits, transforms into a stronger Yoma called an awakened being. While there have been quite a handful of warriors over the history of the claymores who have displayed these psychopathic tendencies, none come close to the character we're about to discuss today. She's the vilest and most evil individual to have donned the claymore armor, and is a mockery of their identity as the last line of defense against the Yoma and the supposed good guys. Her name would be forever spoken in disgust and fear long after her demise. She was known as Roxanne, and held the title of Love and Hate, which was given by her peers after the fate that befell her victims. Roxanne was the #1 ranked warrior of her generation, and arguably considered the strongest warrior of her generation just behind Cassandra. She was not merely one of the strongest warriors, she was also considered to be one of the 8 strongest #1 ranked warriors in the entire history of the organization. In today's video, we're going to discuss how this deranged sociopath carved her bloody way to the top despite being a mere low-ranked warrior. We'll explore Roxanne's chilling character, her life as a claymore, her known victims, her personality, abilities, and how she met her end. So, without further ado, let's dive right into the twisted life of the most evil serial killer in the entire Claymore series, Roxanne of Love and Hate. What is Roxanne's appearance? Even by simply looking at Roxanne, you'd never be able to guess that such evil lurked behind her beautiful face. While there have been claymores that have been shown taking care of their appearance, almost nobody is seen doing it to Roxanne's degree. Most of her peers keep their hair either long or short with very little style. Roxanne, however, tied her wavy hair into 2 pigtails with a short bang that she swept to the left. She also applied mascara and eyeliners along with bright red lipstick, which is generally unheard of for a warrior in her organization. Roxanne also has a beauty mark beneath her eyes. We don't want anyone to get us wrong by assuming that we think taking care of ourselves and wanting to be beautiful is a crime. While we're mentioning her appearance, there are some things that needed to be highlighted as they form a part of a much more complex flaw in her character, which we'll discuss later in the video. It also needs to be noted that her need to appear beautiful is strongly highlighted because she's a part of a warrior group where most of her peers barely care about such things. It doesn't make her doing that wrong, but it certainly makes her stand out. Her body is slender in appearance, and she has the unusual features that all warriors of her kind have. Due to the melanin deterioration caused by her transformation, her hair is blonde. We're not told what her eye color was prior to her transformation, but they appear silver in color, as all Claymores do. Her skin is extremely pale with significantly less pigmentation. Roxanne dons the regular Claymore outfit, which is comprised of a skin-tight white tunic with a dicky that is black in color, and she has her emblem embossed on it. She also has a pair of pants made of the same material and fit. Upon this uniform, she wears a set of dual-layered pauldrons made of plate to guard her shoulders, upper back, and parts of her neck. A pair of vambraces also protect Roxanne's arms, along with a fold that serves to safeguard her hips and upper thighs. On her legs, she wears a pair of greaves and sabatons. To complete her look, she carries her trademark Claymore, which is standard issue for all warriors with her emblem etched into it. If not for her armor and outfit, her general appearance is very similar to that of some female Japanese idol. Her appearance exudes and celebrates her strong feminine energy that dramatically enhances her charisma, making her seem extremely likable and drawing people to her. However, when one finds out to what end she uses her attractiveness, that very same thing feels more corrupted and only serves to instead make her seem even more diabolical. What is Roxanne's personality? Roxanne's personality is that of a sociopath or a psychopath down to the last detail. Besides her beautiful appearance and charisma, she's also seen as being able to say all the right things at the right time to the people she's pursuing. This leads to these individuals quickly falling for her charms. Roxanne appears to blend in perfectly depending on who she's trying to get close to, like a chameleon. She's so proficient at winning the trust of others that even the most closed-off individuals somehow seem to melt before her acting. It is, in fact, because most of these individuals are so closed off to the rest of their peers for a variety of reasons that they end up falling for her act, proving her to be a master manipulator. Roxanne is shown to be extremely calculative when choosing her prey, as her victim profile seems to be primarily individuals who, for a variety of reasons, are outcasts and lone wolves and are generally misunderstood by the rest of their peers. This makes it easy for Roxanne to break through their shell thanks to her extraordinary charms. The deception is so tremendous and elaborate that many of her victims consider her their best friend until the curtains pull down and they realize the monster she truly is. But at that point, it's always too late for them. Roxanne seems to be drawn to individuals with powerful or unique techniques, and she quickly starts her act by trying to befriend these individuals. Later on, we find out that the most important criteria for her choosing her targets and their abilities is not just their strength and uniqueness, but her own perceived notion of their beauty and elegance. This grants us insight into her massively narcissistic personality, which is just another key character trait of a sociopath. Despite appearing as a humble and empathetic person just looking to forge bonds with her peers while trying to improve herself, Roxanne heavily looks down upon everybody around her in disgust. Once the people in her life serve their purpose, they're easily replaced after being mysteriously killed. While it's easy to miss in the beginning, this raises a massive red flag regarding her extraordinary focus on her appearance, because now that we know of her narcissistic tendencies, this habit of hers takes on a whole new meaning. Roxanne is portrayed to the audience as a highly duplicitous individual through how she is able to worm her way into people's confidence and then orchestrate things to her benefit. This is seen when she orchestrates the demise of Cassandra, which we will discuss later in the video. Roxanne is also incredibly shrewd and calculating, due to which there is never any conclusive evidence to prove that her victims' deaths were caused by her. For most of her victims, Roxanne would orchestrate their demise in such a way that it would appear as if they were killed by an awakened being, despite them being more powerful than the monsters they were hunting. She would show no remorse or regret that her best friend had been brutally murdered, and she would simply move on to befriending the next person who caught her interest. Due to this, many in the organization found her creepy and gave her the title of Roxanne of Love and Hate because of the fate that befell the people she befriended. Roxanne, Life and Victims. Uranus. When we first meet Roxanne, she's introduced to us as the rank 35 warrior of the organization. She would take part in the hunt for an awakened being as part of a unit led by the rank 5 warrior Elizabeth, who also included the rank 18, 22, and 31 warriors. It was considered rare for someone of her rank to be considered for a party such as this, yet there she was on that fateful day. In their party of 5, there was a particular warrior that had a peculiar fighting style. Her name was Uranus, and she was the rank 31 warrior at the time. Despite being so low ranked, Uranus was known for being adept at fighting awakened ones and had developed a fighting style that aided her in this. The district that Uranus was in charge of was known to be particularly infested with a high number of awakened beings, and this led her to develop this technique for her survival. Many in the organization, however, looked down on the way she fought, considering it to be unsightly and desperate. They therefore named her technique the Blade of Evil. Roxanne, however, was fascinated watching Uranus fight with this technique and immediately desired to learn it. From then on, Roxanne would fight using Uranus's Blade of Evil and would gradually grow closer to her. Since their districts lay adjacent to each other, Roxanne would take every opportunity to meet her and go on hunts together. Uranus, who was already shunned by the other warriors for her fighting technique, found a kindred spirit in Roxanne and took to her, even as the rest of the warriors began keeping away from both of them due to them using the Blade of Evil, which further strengthened their bond. Then one day, Roxanne would realize not only had she mastered the Blade of Evil, but she had surpassed Uranus in its usage. That day, all of a sudden, she would find Uranus's fighting style desperate and ugly. Not soon after, Uranus would lose her life under mysterious circumstances during an awakened hunt. What was equally spooky and weird, according to the other members who reported the incident, was that Roxanne showed no emotions regarding the incident, and it didn't seem to affect her at all. This incident would take place just as she was promoted to rank 24. Nadine. It wouldn't take long for Roxanne to find her second victim. During another awakened hunt, she would come across Nadine, the rank 9 warrior who was in charge of the hunting party that Roxanne happened to be a part of. Nadine is shown to have an easygoing and boisterous personality, which perhaps didn't appeal to some of her fellow warriors. Having been blinded in one eye before she joined the organization, Nadine wore an eye patch and developed a unique fighting style to overcome her weakness. Roxanne was captivated instantly, once again falling in love with Nadine and her fighting style. To combat the disadvantages caused to her by her missing eye, Nadine developed a fighting style heavily centered around her yoki perception, which she honed to an extreme degree. It was said that her perception abilities were so strong that Nadine could fight with her eyes closed and still fight like she had both eyes. Such was her proficiency with her technique, despite her handicap, that she had risen to the 9th rank in the organization. During their first hunt together, Roxanne, having been enamored by Nadine, would mysteriously lose one of her eyes permanently as well. This would shock everyone in the party, including Nadine, who was initially very suspicious of Roxanne. However, watching her struggle with the same things that she had, Nadine would eventually warm up to the young warrior. Another reason for this was that Nadine felt a strong sense of camaraderie watching her master the same techniques she had under similar circumstances. The two rapidly grew to become best friends, participating in multiple hunts together. They were, in fact, so close that the organization itself recognized their partnership and would often send them on hunts in each other's company. However, one day, Nadine died. This was around the time that Roxanne's own skills of yoki perception and combat had reached the same level as Nadine's. The two had once again been sent on an awakened hunt, during which Nadine, to the shock of everyone, fell to a single low-leveled awakened being. This was beyond the realm of possibilities, as it was unheard of for a single-digit warrior to fall to an enemy of that level. What was even more disconcerting and creepy, as noted at the time by the people who reported the incident, was that Roxanne's eye, which was presumed to be permanently damaged, healed instantly the moment Nadine died. Roxanne would then go on to become the rank 11 warrior after this incident and would once again show a complete lack of care or empathy for the death of her friend. Around this time, she had already been garnering a dark reputation amongst her peers who found her extremely creepy. Elizabeth. Roxanne's third known victim that we're told about is the leader of the very first awakened hunt she was a part of, where she met Uranus. Her name was Elizabeth, and she was the rank 5 warrior of the organization at the time. We're not given precise information regarding how the two became friends, but we can clearly see the same patterns in this case, which were present with her previous victim. Elizabeth had a sword technique that was considered to be the most beautiful sword technique among all the warriors. It's likely that Elizabeth had always been on Roxanne's radar, but she hadn't been able to befriend her due to the gap in their skill levels. Now that she had stolen a number of powerful techniques and had finally risen to rank 11, she probably felt that Elizabeth was within her grasp. Adding to that, we must also note that all of the previous victims of Roxanne had techniques that she considered attractive and beautiful, at least before she stole them. Elizabeth's technique was universally acknowledged as the most beautiful and would no doubt attract Roxanne, as it checked all the boxes for her choice of victim. Another pattern that was repeating itself this time as well was the fact that, once again, her chosen victim was someone ranked higher than her. Shortly after Roxanne masters Elizabeth's beautiful sword, yep, you guessed it, Elizabeth died under suspicious circumstances. Yet again, her death could not fully be traced back to Roxanne, and she was allowed to go scot-free. Roxanne would also assume her former friend's rank and become the new rank 5 warrior from then on. Cassandra and her best friend. Around this time, the number 1 of her era was known as Cassandra, and she was widely regarded as untouchable because the gulf between her and the rest of the warriors was considered to be too vast. Cassandra was a lone wolf who never went into awakened hunts with a party. She always went in alone and came back with not so much as a scratch upon her. Her opponents, though, would be found shredded to bits. No one knew what the secret of her strength was or the techniques she possessed. Cassandra was, in fact, so powerful that she would be considered amongst the 8 strongest number 1 rank warriors to have existed, just like Roxanne. To Roxanne, Cassandra was even more of an enigma and a puzzle that she intensely wanted to solve. Roxanne would become obsessed with Cassandra and would have such intense feelings of affection and craving like she had never had before for anyone else. No one knows whether it was by chance or designed by Roxanne, but the two would meet for the first time in the mountains of the Lautrec region. Roxanne would waste no time introducing herself to Cassandra, telling her how she admired her, and even going so far as to change her sword hand to match Cassandra's. Cassandra was one of the few warriors in the organization who was left-handed, which was considered a rarity. Unlike her public persona, the real Cassandra would reveal herself as a shy and innocent person, blushing at the compliments that Roxanne sent her way. Just like the rest of Roxanne's victims, Cassandra would become close to her, sharing moments together both privately and in training. However, unlike her previous victims, Cassandra left her stumped. This was because no matter how much they trained together, Roxanne was sure that Cassandra's sword skills were barely good enough for her to be a rank 5 warrior, yet here she was, this undisputed and untouchable rank 1 warrior. Roxanne would beg Cassandra to take her on awakened hunts in order to learn her secrets, but her request would always be denied, no matter how much she tried. Unable to contain herself, Roxanne would one day follow Cassandra on one of her solo hunts, salivating at the thought of finally uncovering and stealing this super technique that would place a warrior who would ordinarily not be higher than rank 5 as the apex warrior of her generation. She would do so using one of the many techniques she had learned by this time that allowed her to suppress her yoki completely from her chosen target. As she hid behind a tree, waiting in a hidden frenzy for the moment Cassandra revealed her technique, what she witnessed would be something that left her with a feeling she hadn't expected to feel: disappointment. Cassandra would be surprised to find Roxanne near the hunt's location as she returned from it. We're shown that Roxanne begins asking her what title would be befitting a powerful individual like Cassandra as she begins naming several examples. Cassandra, who still hadn't sensed the contempt and sarcasm in Roxanne's tone, stands confused as she tells her friend that she doesn't like titles, only for Roxanne to drop her acting and name her Cassandra the Dust Eater. You see, the secret to Cassandra's invincibility in battle was her secret technique, which allowed her to sway her head left and right at immense speeds, and using the centrifugal force generated by this, she could lower her posture to the point where it seemed like she was crawling rapidly across the floor. The shocking sight of this technique, combined with its power and nature, meant most foes who faced it for the first time would be cut down before they could devise a countermeasure. According to Roxanne, it made Cassandra appear like she was groveling on the ground, eating the dirt and dust. The reason Cassandra had kept it a secret was because she was supposedly ashamed of this technique's appearance. We're told by Roxanne that she considered it to be the most unsightly and sad technique to ever be used by a number 1 rank warrior. She found it abhorrent and disgusting and didn't find it worth stealing and adding to her arsenal. This, however, didn't mean that Cassandra was off the hook. Instead, it meant that she had become an object of even greater fury for Roxanne. For a narcissist who was obsessed with possessing beauty and power, it was probably a massive blow to find an individual that Roxanne considered beneath her to hold a position above her. Not to mention, being the psychotic person that she was, Roxanne probably blamed Cassandra for leading her on and letting her down. Her hatred would eventually manifest in a series of events that would perhaps be some of her worst atrocities yet. Having noticed that a new number 35 rank warrior and Cassandra had gotten very close to each other, Roxanne would one day lead a hunt with this warrior in her party. As expected, the young girl would be the only one to perish in the hunt. It was said that she was tortured and used as a plaything by the awakened being even when only her head remained. The awakened being, once again, was something that Roxanne, who had reached rank 2 by then, would have been easily able to defeat. Upon confronting Roxanne about the incident, Cassandra finally loses her cool when the former taunts her with the details of her friend's final moments. Cassandra lashes out in front of all the warriors that Roxanne had assembled there after convincing the organization that Cassandra was looking to incite a revolt. The warriors stood dumbstruck in fear and disgust upon seeing Cassandra's strange sword technique as she lunged towards Roxanne. However, life doesn't always have a fairy tale ending, and evil sometimes goes unpunished. Roxanne stops Cassandra by using the Blade of Evil. The number 1 warrior would then be hacked to pieces by her fellow Claymores and would die disgraced, unable to avenge the only person who had accepted her for who she was. Roxanne would assume the number 1 rank not long after. We're not told what happens to her after this point. We do know that she had a troubled relationship with the organization, but it's unclear how she perishes in the end. We do know that she died before she awakened, and her body would later be used by Day to resurrect her, and she would awaken and become one of the new abyssal beings. We can only assume that her list of victims grew after she became the undisputed top warrior of the organization. This is one of those cases where the serial killer is never indicted or confirmed and gets away with all their evil deeds. We're left with the hope that her nefarious ways finally caught up to her in the end, but life's not always fair, is it? Certainly not in the grim, dark world of Claymore. What are Roxanne's abilities? Yoki synchronization. After Cassandra's death, it's said that at some point, Roxanne revealed that she had the ability to synchronize her Yoki with her chosen target. By synchronizing her Yoki with her target, she's able to mimic their movements and Yoki flow, which in turn allows her to easily learn their techniques. This is mere speculation, but we think her Yoki synchronization was not just limited to allowing her the ability to steal others' abilities, but could in fact be used for a far more insidious purpose. If you've been paying attention to this video, you might have noticed a common theme about her victims' deaths. While we don't know every minute detail regarding the events of Uranus and Nadine's demise, we do know that there were other party members present during those awakened hunts. Despite this, Roxanne was never found culpable of their murders, and nothing suspicious was noted other than their relationship to Roxanne and her presence during the event, along with the fact that it was strange for these warriors to have fallen to enemies far weaker than them. We have a theory that Roxanne is able to use her Yoki synchronization to disturb the flow of Yoki, very much like Rafaela, the number 10 rank warrior of the organization. This could have impaired their depth perception and affected things like their orientation and vision, making them easy prey for even weak opponents. This is not beyond the realm of possibility because, say what you want about Roxanne, she was still a prodigy who not only stole techniques from others but also vastly improved them, easily surpassing the original users. Yoki suppression. We're not told exactly where she learned this technique, but one can assume this was once again a variation of her Yoki synchronization technique. It is explicitly stated that she had the ability to completely nullify the presence of her Yoki from her chosen target. Since her Yoki sensing technique was already far beyond that of Nadine, this, combined with her pre-existing innate ability to synchronize her Yoki with her target, probably meant she could camouflage her Yoki with theirs. This resulted in the target not noticing Roxanne's Yoki as they had been perfectly synced and blended together. Her Yoki suppression is therefore vastly different from the ones used by the likes of the Ghosts of the North, Priscilla, and even the effects of the Yoki suppressing pill issued by the organization. It would be, therefore, more appropriate to call it Yoki camouflage. This would make it child's play for her to stalk her victims. This ability of hers was so strong that even Cassandra, one of the strongest ever number 1 rank warriors, couldn't sense her presence. Hyper Yoki sensing. Roxanne was already a prodigy when it came to techniques related to Yoki's manipulation. However, her abilities would be elevated to an even greater level when she stole Nadine's fighting style that depended on her insane Yoki sensing ability. It was said that Nadine, despite only having one eye, could fight with both her eyes closed as stated earlier. The fact that Roxanne is supposed to have surpassed her means Roxanne's ability at bare minimum makes her capable of doing the same thing. This would make her immune to any surprise attacks, and combined with her strength with the blade and other stolen techniques, it's of little wonder that she's considered one of the strongest number ones to have ever existed. Blade of Evil. This is the first documented skill that Roxanne stole from another warrior. Originally belonging to the then 31 rank warrior Uranus, Roxanne would befriend and betray her after surpassing her in this technique. The technique involved the use of every single part of the blade, including the hilt and crossguard, during combat. To other warriors, this method of fighting appeared desperate. Still, it wielded great results for even such a low-ranked warrior like Uranus in her battle to survive against awakened beings far stronger than her. Roxanne would use this technique infamously to counter Cassandra's own signature move, stopping her dead in her tracks and hitting her with the hilt of her blade. The fact that a technique that originally belonged to one of the lowest ranked warriors was able to stop one of the strongest warriors to ever exist shows that Roxanne had far exceeded Uranus in this technique. This is yet again more proof of our statement that Roxanne not only copies other people's techniques, but eventually turns them into far more potent versions than the originals. In the end, the Blade of Evil would be a truly fitting name for a sword technique possessed by Roxanne for obvious reasons. Beautiful Sword. This is the sword technique that Roxanne stole from the then number 5 rank warrior, Elizabeth. We're not told the circumstances of her death, but knowing that most serial killers follow a pattern, it wouldn't be a surprise that she too died on a hunt for awakened beings far weaker than her. Her sword technique was considered to be the most beautiful technique among all her peers. However, Roxanne wouldn't just steal her technique and rank, but also her life. Roxanne's resurrection as an abyssal one. Not much is given to us about Roxanne's life after the events of Cassandra's murder, other than the fact that she caused the organization a great deal of trouble as well. We're also not told the circumstances of her demise, which left a lot of fans with a sour taste in their mouth, as it was assumed her evil was never punished. Much later in the future, she would be resurrected once again by the organization in a desperate attempt to quell the Claymore rebellion under Miria the Phantom. One of the organization's men, named Day, would use the severed hand of Priscilla that they took from Raki to resurrect 3 of the 8 most powerful number 1 ranked warriors in history. The circumstances of her resurrection rested on the fact that she had died without undergoing awakening and her body was still usable for the experiment. This gave us the sickening feeling that Roxanne had led a long and fulfilling life, spreading horror and sorrow. She would be resurrected alongside Hysteria the Elegant and her nemesis Cassandra. Though the other 2 warriors are shown suffering from temporary amnesia, Roxanne is fully aware of who she is and everything else regarding her past life. Roxanne is shown harboring the same level of vindictiveness and hatred towards Cassandra as she makes the latter relive her final moments along with the memory of her friend whom Roxanne had murdered. Cassandra finally regains her memories and, as the trauma overwhelms her, she awakens into an abyssal being. Roxanne continues to mock Cassandra's awakened form, calling her a dust eater even in her awakened state. Roxanne engages with Cassandra in battle, still taunting her, but is abruptly cut short when she realizes that half her torso is missing after Cassandra had chewed through it. This makes Roxanne finally awaken as well, as the 2 engage in a furious duel to the death, ignoring everyone around them. Her awakened form gives her an almost robotic look. Roxanne's awakened body is composed of what seems to be metal sheets overlapping each other that cover her entire body. Her appendages that form her primary arsenal seem to be made of the same material. Roxanne's entire body has a razor-sharp quality to it. She uses her arms as blades to slash at her enemies, and the metal feathers that compose what appear to be long ribbon-like appendages behind her back can be used to throw razor-sharp projectiles at her target. These blades seem to be sharp enough to easily cut through even an abyssal being's body. The only downside to her abilities is that once used as projectiles, the blades take some time to regenerate. Roxanne's personality as an abyssal being shows that she has completely embraced her insanity. She appears smiling maniacally even as Cassandra begins overwhelming her. Even in her final moments, Roxanne continues to berate and taunt Cassandra. She dies with a twisted smile on her face, still spouting curses even as her body is consumed by Cassandra. Marvelous verdict. Roxanne is probably the most hated character in the entire series, even more so than the overarching antagonist, Priscilla. Even though Priscilla is as sadistic and evil as they come, her story is filled with tragedy. We would find out, in the end, all the mayhem and sorrow she caused was because, deep within, she wanted someone to kill her. She hated her miserable existence and transformation and actively created an avenue for a warrior to rise up one day to slay her. The audience feels at least some sort of empathy towards Priscilla, despite all the evil deeds committed by her. Roxanne, however, is evil incarnate. She's a deviation from the natural order of things, a scourge in the guise of a human. She feels no remorse nor sadness for the lives she destroyed or the acts she committed. Roxanne exists as a classic sociopath/psychopathic serial killer whose only purpose is to sow misery and discord in the world to satisfy her own vainglorious narcissistic image. While there are other characters like Ophelia that follow closely in her footsteps, Roxanne is totally in a league of her own when it comes to being a vile, sorry excuse for a human being. The fact that she's even more evil than the Yoma and awakened beings who view humans as mere food and playthings says something about her character. At least the Yoma and awakened beings are slaves to their biology and altered mental state. Roxanne, on the other hand, has no excuses for being the way she is. Claymores have an ethereal beauty along with an otherworldly aura in the eyes of the common folk. Though they're feared, their role as the defenders of humanity is undisputed. This leads to their perception of them being on the side of good. Roxanne's existence, however, proves that sometimes demons come to us disguised as angels. And with that thought, time seems to have escaped us because we're at the end of this video. We hope that we were able to successfully take you on yet another journey through this grim, dark world. While we often discuss monsters and heroes, Roxanne is probably one of the most evil characters we've ever discussed in our Claymore videos so far. Let us know how you feel about her character and whether she had any redeeming qualities that we missed. We're doing more and more Claymore videos on our channel, and there's a fair few of them out already and many more yet to come. Be sure to check those out and keep an eye out for more videos of this kind in the future. As always, your patronage and support are deeply, deeply appreciated. This is Wheezy249 signing off for now, but stay safe out there and we'll catch you soon in the next one. Peace out!